Welcome to the Remembering and Reenchanting podcast. I am your hostess, Reverend Sara Jolina Wolcott, and I am so excited and delighted today to be joined by Sheikh Adeyinka Mendes, who's at his home in Houston, in Texas. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We've been intending to record this conversation for quite some time now.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm delighted that we are finally here together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. And it is really a pleasure and a joy to finally be doing this with you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, I'm having that kind of wonderful experience of like, oh, there's just so many places that we could start this conversation. Where do we want to begin? Um, and and I find myself like I'm wondering if like we could start with what are you remembering?
Mm. I'm remembering. It's That's a really powerful question. Um, if you and your audience don't mind, I'm gonna kind of, pull on my connection with sacred Arabic,
Mm.
which is the language that the language that I learned. I was not born a Muslim. I learned Arabic in my late teens. Um, the word for remember is tadhakkur. It comes from a word that means dhikr, and which you could also translate as memory.
Huh.
And the objective of the spiritual path of Islam is two things. Ultimately, to remember the divine, the absolute reality that is the ground of all being, invoked by many names: Allah, uh, God, Creator, Wankantanka by some of the indigenous peoples, right? The Great Mystery. Uh, and the goal of Muslims who are seekers, spiritual seekers, is to remember the Creator
Mm.
as the Creator was before creation existed. So to remember the Creator, the divine, beyond the fabric of time and space, without duality. And that is the means by which we remember our true selves. There's a passage in the Quran, in the sacred Quran, where God, the Creator, says, "You forgot the divine, and so you forgot. You were made to forget your own selves." And so, remembering the divine, uh, goes hand in hand with remembering our highest selves. And so, that's a long way for me to answer your question. Like, what am I remembering? My goal every day is to more deeply remember myself, in the first, and in my origin, to remember the Creator. And what's so beautiful about that is that all of us, all of us were present in the knowledge of the Creator. We are all there. And so
Mm.
remembering the Creator is also a way of remembering all that is and all that will be.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, as you're saying, I'm thinking about the word samanvaya in Sanskrit, which is
Mhm.
part of what I use to describe this venture, Sequoia Samanvaya. And it's often, I often translate it, it's simply translated into harmony, but
Mm,
it's the harmony that was at the beginning of all things and will be at the end of all things, and has this sort of perpetual, it has that non-duality. It also has a bit of the intricacy of the weave of the web, right? Like it
mhm,
does have some of
mhm.
that sense of working things in congruence or collaboration, working together. But there's a sense of there's a wholeness at the beginning and the end of all of creation that is also still present right now.
Right, right, right.
Um, and I see that in a lot of Christian. I can see that within Christianity as well. But I love that invitation to always, that every day to be kind of, what are the actions that we can take every day towards remembering
Mm, mm, mm,
our true selves, as we were in a space of union.
mm. Yeah. Well, a lot of the actions are fundamental, to many different paths. I think one, prayer, meditation, you know, um, fasting, giving giving of ourselves with presence. These are all ways of remembering, uh, charity, and but giving charity selflessly and joyfully. All of them give us
Mm.
an opportunity to remember, right? To remember who we truly are, who we originally were, right? In this very, this current dimension that we all share, that is full of, pain and suffering and joy and happiness and, separation and reunion as well. Right? We have all of these, you know, this dynamic play of opposites. The primary method that we use in the Muslim tradition to remember is a practice that's literally called remembering or dhikr, you know, and it consists of chanting the names of the divine, the attributes of the divine, n- attributes like the eternally loving one, Ar-Rahim, attributes like the exceedingly generous one, Al-Karim, names and attributes like Al-Wadud, the loving, right? And the one who gives life, Al-Muhi, the one who causes death, Al-Mumit. And so we chant these names sometimes just throughout the day, sometimes at specific times to a specific number. And they help bring us into presence with the divine.
I'm curious if you have a particular memory when you first came to the process of that chanting, when you first participated in it, and you felt something bigger than yourself, like if that was part of your conversion story or that was part of your journey. There was a particular moment that you can share about that experience.
And yeah, no one's ever asked me that in public before. So uh,
You don't have to, we don't have to. answer that one if you don't want to.
Um, so I was raised in the Christian tradition. Um,
Uh-huh.
my parents were pretty ecumenical, right? So, you know, I attended a Catholic school in my elementary years. Um, you know, we visited Anglican churches and, you know, Pentecostal churches, and but our base was in the Baptist church, right? Our base was in the Baptist church. When we lived in Nigeria, we moved to Nigeria when I was 6 years old. I was born in Ohio, and we moved from Cincinnati to Lagos, Nigeria when I was 6, and stayed there 7 years before moving back to the States. While in the United States, we went to Black Baptist churches. While in Nigeria, we went to a Nigerian Baptist church. And so that was kind of our base, our home base. And when I first started to remember, I was 16 years old and on a uh, a trip to Palestine and the Israel, and it was a trip with the Mickey Leland Kibbutz internship program. And I was accompanied by 11 other American high school students who had finished their junior year. We spent 6 weeks there. And we went everywhere from Tel Aviv to Beersheba, you know, Jerusalem. We went to the West Bank, Bethlehem, Nazareth, Haifa. We went all over the country and went to several historical, cultural, religious sites of various religions, different religions, right? From the Baha'i to Armenian, Christian, Catholic, Muslim, of course, Jewish sites. We visited a Druze community as well, and during that trip, I started to feel a calling to, and I don't know what it was in particular. And we did other things. We did just do tourist stuff. We lived on a kibbutz, right? And we worked on a kibbutz for like 2 to 3 weeks. We worked just like regular kibbutzniks. And in the heat of the Negev desert, picking tomatoes and working in greenhouses and chicken houses and all that stuff. It awakened something within me. Um, and I think it's because that land is so blessed, it's so holy. It's the land of prophets. It's a land of great saints, men and women. And something started to call me, and I had a number of, I would call them, transcendent experiences, while I was there, that resulted in me embracing Islam 9 months later, which I think is also interesting, that it was 9 months, after the trip. It's like something was growing, like new life was growing within me. Um, that's kind of how it began, and then later on, as I developed my practice of dhikr, of invocation, of chanting the divine names and divine praise. Um, I would just say other dimensions began to open themselves up. And I think it's really important because, a lot of people seek altered states of consciousness. And, it's very popular now to use psychedelics and, ayahuasca, and, people do all kinds of things that cost a lot of money, where there's risks involved.
Mhm.
significant risks involved. But with dhikr, there's none of that. You
Mm.
don't have to pay a dime to anyone. I mean, you might pay for a nice set of dhikr beads, but you can make these yourself, right? And you don't need these. They have digital dhikr beads now on smartphones, and that you can download. You can install the apps, and I don't really care for those, but I'm more old fashioned. I like wood, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, it doesn't cost. What was that?
My bells in my background are singing with you. They like the
Oh,
wood too.
that's the sign of agreement. I'm so happy. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
grateful for
Ugh.
that. But yeah, it doesn't cost any money. It's just you and the it's you and your heart and your tongue,
Mm.
and attuning yourself to a frequency that is beyond this world, right? And
Mhm.
so yeah, and I think when I started to really deepen my practice, that's when I became more aware of how to remember, and of the
Mm.
memory that transcends the physical universe.
Mm. Mm. Mhm. I'm just sensing a bit of that power of that practice as you're describing it. I can kind of sense it a tiny bit, and it's like feeling the kind of like a humility before such a practice that can bring people to such a embodied memory.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, indeed. Tremendous humility.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think what's really humbling, at least for me, is that every human being potentially has the ability, the faculties to experience that memory, and
Hmm.
regardless of where you're from or how old you are, there are no barriers, right? There are no barriers to the boundlessness of the ocean of eternity, right?
Hmm.
We all have a passport, so to speak. You don't need a visa. Um, and what I found in my own journey is that memory enables me to have greater clarity with
Hmm.
regard to the present moment. And we're facing, I think, for our generation, unprecedented challenges. I mean, it's been more difficult, it's been more challenging in human history. But I think for our generation, geopolitically, there's so many challenges right now. Um, I mean, take your pick, right? And
Hmm.
having this kind of this, it's not even a 30,000 or 50,000 foot perspective. It's because when you remember the divine, you are able to perceive beyond uh, the limits of any kind of measurement of height, right? And it gives you a picture, a beautiful
Hmm.
picture of the plan, right? We're all part of a plan, and when you're so close to the carpet of the cosmos, the carpet of the planet, and life in general, the messiness of life. And when you're that little ant, as Rumi says, you know, crawling among the fibers of the carpet of the world, every fiber looks like a huge tree.
Mm,
But when you're able to ascend, uh, then you are able to see the beautiful pattern, and there is a beautiful pattern with all the pain and all the suffering and the trauma and the tribulations human choices uh, human choices bring upon us.
mm, mhm, mhm. And I hear that invitation to go deeper into both, to not shy away from the trauma, to not shy away from the pain, even as you come closer uh, to different forms of blissful oneness, to also keep keep close to the pain.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. uh like my guide, Prophet Muhammad, he, from the very beginning of his journey, experienced tremendous loss. And I call him my guide, not because I physically have sat with him, but because all my, you know, present guides, are branches from the tree of his being. And, but, he experienced loss early on in life. He was born without his father. His father passed away. His father, Abdullah, passed away while his mother, Amina, was pregnant with him. His mother passed away when he was 6 years old. So he was a full orphan at the age of 6. Then his grandfather took care of him. And he passed away when Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, was 8. And then his uncle, one of his paternal uncles, took care of him. And once he received divine revelation, once he received inspiration and began to invite his people to remember, to remember the divine without duality, without uh, worshiping idols, without uh, absolutizing what's relative and contingent and in time, and calling them to harmony and peace, and not to enslave, and not to oppress the weak, and so on and so forth, and to live lives of wholeness and healthy lives of service. His own people in Mecca rejected him. Most of them did. They didn't only reject him, they persecuted and tortured him and his followers. And so he lost many followers. That pattern of loss continued until his own wife, Khadija the Great, lost her life as a result of the boycott, the sanctions, that his own people had put on them. And his life was full of tremendous pain and suffering. Yet his companions, and that's what his followers were, he called them. He didn't call them disciples. He called them companions or friends, you would say. You know, he they would describe him as the most smiling of people. And so they said when he was alone, he was very solemn. Um, but when he was with people, he was always had a smile on his face. He was always bringing cheer to others, right? And I think that in him, I've learned this balance between accepting the tragedy uh, that life inevitably brings, embracing that and accepting it and understanding its meaning, seeking to understand the meaning of tragedy and how tragedy is also an invitation to transformation, along with accepting and embracing the beauty of life, right? And I think I would argue that there's actually more beauty than tragedy, more triumph than tragedy, actually. But they are
Mm.
mixed. It is a bundle, right? It's a package deal.
We get plenty of both.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Mm, mm. When you're I really appreciate when you were talking about your journey to Palestine, um, the way you talked about the land, and the recognizing, like, the agency and the power of the land herself, um, and and I'm just wondering if you can speak to some of, like, 'cause one of the threads that has animated your journey, um, has been the power and the presence of the land.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and I can clearly, when you narrate the story, I really appreciate the ways in which you interweave the presence of the land into your spiritual journey.
mm,
And today you do a lot of work to help to think about and support uh, the presence of land and waters
mm, mm,
as part of our journeys of remembering across multiple religious traditions, especially within Islam. It's like, is there, and that's led to lots of work with indigenous folks,
mm,
and but
mm.
also reconceptualizing and, like, kind of doing some redefining and reimagining and reconfiguring of how to think about this process of remembering, especially as a Black man working in service of Black folk.
Yes.
That's like a big open invitation. If there's anything there that you
There's a lot there. I mean,
what? Yeah, there's a lot there.
yeah, I would say, first, so many people are called to the path of the prophets who don't go to Palestine, right? I know people who,
Mm.
I know people who have dreams or visions or, they some people read books, some people like Malcolm X, right? He was imprisoned, he discovered his spiritual awakening in prison, and, there's so many roads to the truth, right? But I think for me, going to Palestine is extremely important, and the struggle for liberation and self-determination of the Palestinian people has really been present with me throughout my life for the past 32, 33 years. Um, and I don't think I think um, anyone who understands the importance of the human soul
Mm,
ultimately will arrive at the truth that our souls, our cultures are a reflection of the land, of the earth upon which we walk, as well as the sky that that
mm,
covers us. It's
mm,
it's it's body and spirit, right? Um, and so land has tremendous energy, land has tremendous memory.
Mm.
Um, land has spirit, and throughout you and I have spoken about this. That within the Muslim tradition, in the Quran, in the sacred Quran, the divine Quran, you see the personification of the land. Right? God speaks to the land. In the Quran,
Mm.
he describes the land in ways that are very human,
Mm.
anthropomorphic. Um, Prophet Muhammad spoke to the land. He would speak to the moon. He would speak, to trees and to camels, and we have stories in the Quran about Prophet Solomon, King Solomon, God bless his soul, communicating with birds and with jinn, right? These unseen beings that have free will like us. Where we get in English, we get the word genie from the word jinn, right?
Mm.
Uh, I was watching a rerun of I Dream of Jeannie just not too long ago. Uh, but so these words are in our language, and a lot of times we don't know where they're from. We don't know the lore, right? The back
Uh-huh.
lore. But
Uh-huh.
land is so powerful, and you know, it's a powerful healing and medicine and uniter. It's so sad that in our world it's become a source. Well, how we perceive land as humans, it's become a source of division and war, conflict, genocide in the case of our Palestinian
Mm.
brothers and sisters. And I come from a tradition within Islam that is nonviolent, right? The tradition
Mhm.
of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, who was a great scholar, Gnostic, mystic, who lived from 1853 to 1927. And he faced an occupation on his land, on his own land, right, of the French. And through the spiritual guidance of Prophet Muhammad, he made a deal not to do anything that would result in one drop of Senegalese blood or one drop of French blood
Mm.
falling on the land.
Mm.
That not one drop of the oppressed or the oppressor's blood would fall on the land. And so how do we honor the land in our struggles
Mhm.
is a big part of the work that I do. And I think you were kind of alluding to that. Um, how do we reimagine our relationship with the land? Something I've learned from a lot of my native indigenous friends, teachers who are particularly from the Ojibwe clan, Anishinaabe nation, and Dene from the Lakota spiritual tradition, is um, the importance of reciprocity and relationship with the land. And for me, that was a rediscovery, because when I dug into looked into the Quran and looked at the life of Prophet Muhammad and his companions, it's there, but I was blind to it.
Mhm.
I was blind to it
Mhm.
until my indigenous friends taught me this, right? Until I heard it
Mhm.
from them. And that's why uh, interspiritual, interfaith dialogue and discussion is so important, right? It's extremely important for
Mhm.
us to hear and see one another and to listen to one another.
Right.
So now,
Mhm.
as you had mentioned, I do a lot of work with helping African Americans in particular and African people of descent in general reestablish relationship and reciprocity with the land, uh, to remember their light, their greatness
Mm,
as a spiritual force for
mm,
freedom for all of creation, to
mm,
remember the great cultures and civilizations that they
mm.
come from. Malcolm Jamal Warner, who just passed away, he had a podcast called uh, "Not All Hood," you know, and that our culture, our tradition is not. It's not just the hood, right? It is.
Mm,
It is really. It's so much more than that. But the hood is a part of it. But it's not all the hood.
mhm,
And the media and the music industry and the film industry, the news media, I meant to say, they are invested in only presenting one dimension of Black life,
mm,
Black culture, right? Black farmers, um, Black uh, herbal healers, people who practiced what's called hoodoo in Louisiana, where my mother's from. Right, my father immigrated to the States from Nigeria. He's from the Yoruba nation, indigenous nation. My mother is a Black woman from New Iberia, Louisiana, the land of Tabasco sauce and sugarcane. And yeah, but so hoodoo is a big part of their culture, like working with the land, working with roots, and using them for memory and for
mm,
healing. And sometimes things that are, uh, you know, more nefarious. But the idea is people are more connected. And so, what does that look like? What does it look like for us to, economically and politically root ourselves in the land again?
mm,
What does it look like for us to root our culture, not in what corporations offer us, either through music or sports, but what does it look like for a culture that's rooted in the land? Because that's what indigenous people do, right? You know, culture, it comes out of the cycles of the land and of the sky and of the animals and the plants. What does it look like for African Americans to reclaim that? That's a lot of the work that I do. So it's spiritual, it's political, it's economic, it's social, it's cultural, and I've found a wealth of love and
mm,
empathy and guidance from our indigenous brothers and sisters, who are, I see as, number one, they're our hosts in North
mm,
America, Turtle Island, the land of the eagle. South
mm,
America, the land of the condor. They are our hosts. They are our teachers. They are the original stewards of this land. And they know things about this land that no one else knows. Uh, and I think that just as African Americans and Muslims and indigenous people had communities, right? They had maroon communities. And just so everyone who's listening is on the same page, a maroon was someone who practiced marriage in the time of slavery in the United States. When slavery was legal, it's mostly illegal. In the Constitution, it's still permitted to enslave prisoners, right? And
mm.
hopefully that can at some point be excised out of the Constitution, uh, God willing, Creator willing. But the Maroon communities were these people who refused to be enslaved. They either ran away as soon as the slave ship reached the coast of the United States, and they escaped the slave auction blocks, or they escaped from the big house, from the plantation house. They escaped from the plantation fields to go join uh, communities of free Africans and native people, who lived in the swamps or who lived in the mountains or in the forest. There's a really good book about it called Slavery's Exiles, for anyone who wants a deep dive, by Sylvan uh, Joff. Her last name is Joff. It's spelled Diouf. Slavery's Exiles: The Story of Marinage in North America. But yeah, so we were one community, and I want to. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but I think it's important, Reverend Sarah, that
It's really important.
yeah, that uh, and I so my spiritual teacher is a Haitian.
Mm,
So his name is Zoe Abdullah. Zoe is a Haitian Creole word for bone, right? Bone, the essence of a thing, right? What the essence of a thing that gives it structure, right? And one of the things
mhm,
I learned, I've been with him for 15 years now, and one of the things I learned from this incredibly t- transcendent and compassionate human, uh, who I lovingly call Papi, Papizo, is that America has a spiritual role to play, and
mm,
it has a mission, a divine mission that we almost never hear about. And that this divine mission is something that our ancestors, African ancestors, Asian ancestors, European ancestors agreed upon. And that is that America, Turtle Island, one of the names that indigenous people call this land, would be a place of gathering. It would be a place of gathering for all the tribes, all the nations of the world. And why? Why are they gathering here? That they would come to gather here so that a new human consciousness can emerge. A consciousness that is a composite, a melting, a fusing of the spirits of all of the tribes of humanity, all the nations of humanity. Now, I heard this from my teacher, and I have been reflecting on it, holding it, close to my heart for many, many years. And when I met uh, my one of my Ojibwe teachers, um, Little Half Moon is his indigenous name, Abatunse Gizis, also known as Mike Najiwan, who he lives in Canada, but he comes to the United States every now and then. He's a walker. He's an earth walker, right? They have water walkers in the indigenous tradition, but they also have earth walkers, people who walk the earth and offer prayers and song and sacrifice to heal the earth, to heal the soil, to heal people. And he told me the same thing. And they've never met each other. He said,
mm.
our prophecies say the same thing. Right. And well, he didn't say it that way. He told me we have prophecies that, Turtle Island is this place of gathering for all the four nations, right? The indigenous people, some of them use this idea of the four nations, the black nation, the red nation, the yellow nation, the white nation, to symbolize all of humanity, and that this is a place of gathering. Oh, so what's the function? What's the role of this land? Um, we, I'll say this. I'll end with this point that you know our political leaders, the economic elites, the tech bros, the tech moguls who have such influence over how our day-to-day lives go. They also want us to unite, but to unite solely for commercial and economic interests. Right? There's no transcendent, there's no spiritual, there's no moral uh, uh, objective, imperative. It's they want us to unite into one happy consumerist, you know, co- community, hyper consumerist community, so that they can get more wealthy, so that they can consolidate power. Whereas this other vision that I learned from my teacher from Haiti. It's funny, when I went to Haiti and I was on my way back to the States, someone in the airport said, "Oh, you went to Haiti? It was so nice that you went there to help them." And I said to them, "Actually, I was the one who was helped." Because people have this idea that Haiti is this welfare case, right? And they don't understand the political factors and the economic factors that intentionally, systemically impoverish Haiti, because Haiti is the only case in the history of humanity where the formerly enslaved rebelled against their slave masters and won and established their own government. It's the only
Mm,
history, it's the only case we have in human history. And
mm,
that's why we don't know about it.
mm,
But Haiti and Haiti, you know, they defeated Napoleon's army, Napoleon
mm,
Bonaparte, right? Which weakened him significantly. And that's why he sold the Louisiana territory to the United States, right? Without
mm,
Haiti, we wouldn't have the Louisiana Purchase.
mm,
Simon Bolivar was inspired by Haiti, right? The Haitian Revolution was not just about blacks and Taino and Arawak people overthrowing the French. It was about liberating humanity, right? So
mm,
liberating humanity for what? Again, so that we can
mm,
become one, not lose our individuality, not lose our tribes and nations and our cultures, but our spiritual unity is what this moment calls a unity of heart that
mm,
appreciates and recognizes the uniqueness of each tribe, of each nation, of each
mm,
ethnicity, each culture, right? And it is the unity of
mm,
light, the inner light that is in us, that is this mission, the spiritual mission of Americas. Not just the United States, but the Americas, North America, the land of the eagle, and South America and Central America, the land of the condor. That's why we're here. And we can see that there's no other place in the world that I'm aware of where so many people from so many different places converge. And on the surface, yes, there are economic and political forces that have facilitated that. There's immigration policy, and but what's the metaphysical? What are the metaphysical forces behind that? I think that's really interesting to contemplate.
mhm. I also know Mike, your
Yeah.
father.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
I sometimes think of him as the man who goes to the mountain and then occasionally comes back again.
That's him. That's Mike. That's
Because he
Mike.
always goes up and talks to the spirits and comes back and gives us a good word. And
But
I
where
think
did
he
you
would
meet?
probably
Where did
want
you
me to
meet?
add that he also goes to the ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
Where did you meet?
Yeah, yeah. Where did we meet? I'm trying to remember where we first met. It was at a gathering, right? It was at a gathering, and he was at the gathering, and my partner and I, like, we connected with him very quickly. And my partner has an amazing capacity she tends to stand in the back and not say much, and everyone goes to her, and
Mm,
people just find
mm,
their way to her. And
yeah,
she's really built quite a number of relationships with quite a number of elders, which is really, really sweet and special to witness. Um, and That I have so many I've learned so much from him, and and so like we've been in a couple different gathering spaces together, and they kind of blur in my mind. I think the first one was near here in the Berkshire area, and in these mountains out here.
mm,
Um, and he would always kind of go outside and say a few words to the wind, get up early and
yeah,
greet the
yeah, that's
sunrise,
it.
bring whatever he heard that morning into the gatherings. And sometimes that wasn't where the leaders of the gatherings thought that day would go.
Right,
Um,
right.
but he would always point to the emerging spirit. Where is the spirit taking a conversation?
Mhm,
Where is the spirit taking a
mhm.
gathering? And you follow that. And if you're not following that, really, why are you gathering?
Exactly,
Really, why are you gathering if you're not listening, if you're not being guided by the sunrise?
exactly.
And that follows it.
Mm,
It fits very, very well with the kind of Quaker training I had growing up,
yeah,
and with my own theology and understanding today. And it's not an easy path. It sounds so easy, and it's really not. It's really
mm,
not. But it's so amazing. Like, it's a path of miracles.
yeah,
It's not an easy path, but it is a path of miracles.
a true indeed.
And yeah,
Mm.
and I don't think he has this anymore, but when I first met him, he drove around in an ambulance. Did
No,
you
exact
did
he
you know
doesn't have
him
the
during this?
ambulance anymore, you're right.
He doesn't have the ambulance anymore, but he would just have all this medicine and plants
Mhm,
and stories, and he would always have something for somebody in the back of his ambulance. And it was the most amazing. I'm like, "Oh, I'm seeing an actual medicine man with an actual ambulance
isn't that
wandering around."
exactly, exactly. Wow.
So, yeah, I
He
feel
he
like
brought
I'm sure you
he
feel
brought
it.
that ambulance to
Yeah.
to my house to visit me, and my
Oh,
children
yeah?
my
Yeah,
children
that's what he does. That's what he does.
yeah, my children are like,
Yeah.
"Daddy, there's an ambulance in our driveway."
Yeah, you're like, "Don't worry, it's okay." Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some medicine men drive ambulances these days.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's the world we get to live in. How lucky are we, right?
Yeah, and, and
And
he's someone,
yeah.
again, he's been through so much adversity, so much pain and trauma. I mean, stuff that kind of, I mean, it's beyond what I could even fathom, and he's full of so much, again, love and beauty, and he's tells jokes, all the time, and again, he's carrying so much, right?
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of lessons for us in that, you know, of how we show up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I met him at Karenagor, uh,
Right,
out
yeah. I
yeah,
also
yeah,
Did
were
you know
you
that
there?
we know that we that I used to work with her?
I did not know that. At Union?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, I did not know that. What year? What year was that?
It was throughout my time at Union.
Oh, nice.
So that
Okay.
was a good 4 years. So I graduated in 2017. I had my diploma on my wall, which I had to look at it to remind myself when I
Uh,
graduated because I'm so bad with dates. So which is ironic that I work with dates and history all the time now, but, but yeah, I graduated in 2017. So I knew her for all 4 years. I think the last two or 3 years I was with the Center for Earth Ethics as it was kind
Mhm.
of
Right.
I was
Forming.
volunteering for the Center for Earth
Yeah.
Ethics as it was becoming a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, how'd you know her?
So a friend of mine who was in my congregation at where you and I first met
Yeah.
in Central
Uh-huh.
Jersey, at the Muslim Center of Greater Princeton. He was a farmer. He is a farmer, and he invited me to a conference training on water. And as you
Mhm.
know, the Center for Earth Ethics, there, you know, Karena, who's one of Al Gore's Vice President Al Gore's daughters, she really believes in bringing together, uh, you know, policymakers, legal experts, artists, healers, spiritual teachers, religious leaders, and scientists, and talking about the opportunities and the challenges, right, around
Mhm.
our relationship with climate, with the environment. And so it was a water conference about these issues. And Mike was there with grandmother Josephine, who was a water walker. Yeah. Did you
Uh-huh.
meet grandmother Josephine as well?
I know of her. Yeah. I think I met her once, yeah, but I don't know her very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, she
I'm just imagine I can just picture the whole scene.
yeah, so she was there. Mendahi was there as well.
Uh-huh.
And there was, I don't know, maybe like 100 or so people there, right? But the creator had it that I would stand next to Mike and grandmother Josephine at the opening
Mhm.
invocation, the
Mhm.
opening ritual ceremony, and completely unplanned. But I was just standing next
Mhm.
to them, and uh, I've never left. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love him so much.
creator would have it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I love him so much.
That makes
Yeah,
sense to me.
yeah, he was just on. We had so we have an organization slash community called Muslim Indigenous Circle. It used to be called Four Nations Unite, and so Mike was on last week's online gathering, and very vulnerable. I mean, it's the most vulnerable,
Yeah.
very tender, very vulnerable, but like you said, still calling us all to the emerging spirit, calling us to
Mhm.
something greater than the agenda, right? The schedule, the the itinerary that we plan, and so it was really just very humbling to witness and be share space with him, and to heed his words, that are so needed and necessary for us.
Mhm. Mhm. So many prophets. Um, hmm. So we're having this I actually feel like we might be able to end this within in the hour, which is always sort of an interesting experience for me. Um, I feel like usually when you and I talk, we never know how long we're going to talk for.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
and it's usually
Mm.
longer than I had scheduled, which is always a delight. I just like want to ask,
Mm.
as there's so many pieces we can go further, deeper on. Um, I really want to. I'm definitely going to be putting some of the references in the show notes, and including for the Muslim Indigenous community, because I know I've known many Muslims who've wanted to join.
Oh, nice,
So definitely going to be putting that out
nice.
there, making that easy for folks to join and to participate in, and like really lifting up some of the different opportunities for people to be engaged with the kind of many facets of the work that you're doing. I'm just kind of wondering if there is a kind of a story or yeah, just something you want to, if there's something you want us to land on or kind of end with today
Mm.
in this long process of remembering and re-enchanting together.
The story that's, been most, present for me the past, month or 2,
Mm,
is a story that I think a lot of us are familiar with. Um, it's a story of Joseph, the son of Jacob.
mm,
Of course, it's in the Hebrew Bible, um, but it's also found in the Quran. There's actually a chapter in the Quran called the chapter of Joseph, and um, I highlight it in my sermons and in my classes because it takes you through all the roller coaster of human emotions. It takes you through all the stages of transformation. It's a story of about loss. It's a story about grief. It's a story about fear. It's a story about love. It's a story about temptation. It's a story about leadership. Um, and when I work in my work with African Americans, and in particular, and people of African descent, we have there's an organization me and my wife Rokeya Yakub started called the African American Healing, Ancestry, and
mm,
Development Collective, Ahad for short. And we talk about how, you know, Black people's history at a macro level is in many ways a reflection of these prophetic stories, especially
mm,
Joseph at a micro level. Just like Joseph was sold, by his brothers into slavery, left in the well to die. African Americans were sold into slavery by their brothers and imprisoned wrongfully, uh, held against their will, just like Joseph was imprisoned wrongfully, tempted and seduced. African Americans had to deal with this uh, in so many different ways, and now we see, and then being given these spiritual gifts, right? Um,
mm,
at least in the Quran, the primary spiritual gift among many is his ability to interpret not just dreams, but interpret events,
mm,
life, because
mm,
life is symbolic.
mhm,
There's symbol in life, everything that happens to us, even you and I sharing the last hour or so, there's a meaning to that. Like one of my Sufi
mm,
teachers told me once, every meeting has a meaning, right? Every meeting has a meaning. And what's the opposite of that which is symbolic? The opposite of the symbolic is diabolical. And so without
mm,
meaning, we become diabolical. Uh, Without meaning and purpose, we become nihilistic. And this is what Friedrich Nietzsche, the great German philosopher, warned us about when he proclaimed uh, through his play, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, that God, we had killed God. Of course, he didn't mean that literally, but the idea
mhm,
was that I love the title of your podcast, that we had killed the memory of God. We had
mm,
killed
mm,
enchantment. We had killed
mm,
your podcast is called Remembering and Reenchanting. And this is what our world needs because we live in a
Mhm.
very disenchanted world. We live in a world where the supernatural and the metaphysical have been relegated to Hollywood, right? And, you know, they're no longer a part of our lives. Technology has taken the place of it. And so the story of Joseph, particularly my work with African Americans, is really powerful. And at the end of his story, what does he do? He forgives his brothers. You know, he had a dream when he was a young boy that the sun and the moon and the planets were prostrating to him. And at the end of his life, his mother, his father, and his brothers are prostrating or bowing to him. And to honor his journey, to honor his arrival, to honor his representing everything good in them. But the key thing for me, beyond his amazing dream and amazing journey, is the forgiveness.
Mm.
How do we get
Mm.
to forgiveness? And the forgiveness doesn't happen at the beginning of the story, happens at the end. And
Mm.
Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, he also forgave his people who had killed, maligned, tortured, his followers, and attempted to assassinate him multiple times, forgave them at the end, even though they had blood on their hands, forgave them.
Mm.
And so I think this story is so full, pregnant with lessons and guidance for not just African Americans, but for all of us, whether you are black or white or brown, whatever your socioeconomic, whatever your sexual orientation may be, whatever your socioeconomic background may be, or whatever your religion is, or even if you have no religion, right? Even if someone considers themselves an atheist, I think there's so many lessons here about the journey, about going into the darkness. Right? Joseph,
Mm.
God bless him and grant him peace, in order to get to becoming the governor of Egypt, who, with all this power at the end of his journey, he had to go into the darkness of the well. He had to be thrown into the bottom of the pit. He
Mm.
had to go into the darkness of prison. He had to endure slavery, right? Um, and he went through so many different changes in his conditions. Even though he's a prophet, this man's a prophet. you
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
uh, God put him through so much because it is through these trials that virtues and character, strong character, is forged. But his ultimate gift, along with his many, many, many gifts of character, was being able to forgive his oppressors. Because it is in forgiveness that the oppressed, it's in forgiveness that the oppressed gives the oppressor the opportunity of redemption, the
Mm.
opportunity to reimagine how they show up in the world. So that story is most present for me, and I see that story in so much of my own life, and I see it in the lives of the people around me. Um, so I would invite people to. I know our time is up, but I would invite people to just reflect on that. Reflect on that story, the story of Joseph in Egypt, and
Mm.
this one last thing about that story, like his story had to happen so Moses' story could happen. Right? The way that the
Mhm.
Israelites came into Egypt was through Joseph, because
Mhm.
around 1,000 years later or so, Moses, God bless him and grant him peace, the great prophet Moses, uh, he had a mission to liberate. And so sometimes, our stories, not sometimes, our stories are always a part of a larger plan. The beautiful carpet I spoke about earlier, that
Mm,
weaves our journeys and our own triumph into that of others before us and those who come after us, the seven generations that indigenous people talk about.
mm, mm. Well, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that
Thank
story
you.
to recall Joseph, and I also love it's a story that's, like, in multiple traditions, and has taken on many versions and variations and meanings, um, acknowledging the land of Egypt that story comes from as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's
It's a
really been an
pleasure.
honor having this conversation. There's so many other conversations we've had, over the past, yeah, years. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for
It's
being.
a true it's a special opportunity to dwell with you in the presence.